When Esteban Santamaria returned to his hometown as a millionaire, he discovered that he had left behind more than just memories. He had a 14-year-old daughter who believed he had died. What happened next would forever change the meaning of true wealth. The black Mercedes kicked up a cloud of golden dust as it pulled up in front of the adobe house that had haunted Esteban Santamaria's dreams for 15 years. At 38, he had become one of the most powerful businessmen in the country, but at that moment, standing in front of his childhood home, he felt like the 23-year-old who had fled with a broken heart and empty hands. San Rafael del Valle hadn't changed much. The same adobe houses were slowly crumbling under the relentless sun. The same unpaved streets kicked up dust with every gust of wind. But to Esteban, every stone, every corner, every shadow screamed the name he had tried to forget for a decade and a half. Marina. Mr. Santa Maria. His choir's voice interrupted his thoughts. Do you want me to wait for you here? Yes, Miguel. I don't know how near I'll be, Esteban replied. His voice was hoarse with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. He had come for his grandmother Elena, the only family he had left in the world. Marina's letter had arrived at his office like a ghost from the past. Esteban, I saw your picture in the newspaper. Your grandmother is very ill. She says your name in her dreams. Please come home. When his parents died in that terrible accident, Esteban had believed that he had nothing else tying him to this place. He had left in pursuit of a better future, promising himself that he would return for Marina when he had something to offer her. But the years passed, the pain became too great, and eventually he stopped writing letters he never sent. Now, as he walked toward the door of the house where he had grown up, his heart was beating as if it were about to explode. What would Marina look like after so many years? Would she be married? Would she have children? Would she hate him for leaving without a word? The door opened before he could knock, and time stood still. Marina Bolivar was standing in the doorway, and she was exactly as he remembered her, but also completely different. At 35, she had developed a mature beauty that took his breath away. Her brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and she wore a simple blue dress that enhanced her eyes. But it was those eyes that devastated him. They were still the same warm, expressive eyes he had loved, but now there was a depth, a wisdom in them that spoke of years of struggle and sacrifice. He whispered her name, and it sounded like a prayer on his lips. Marina responded and realized she had been holding her breath. They stood there looking at each other as 15 years of silence stretched between them like an abyss. There were so many things to say, so many explanations to give, so many apologies to make, that neither of them knew where to begin. How is Esteban? He finally asked, though he knew Marina would understand that he wasn't referring only to his grandmother. He's very weak, Marina replied softly, but he'll be so happy to see you. He's been waiting. And you? The words came out before he could stop them. You've been waiting too. Marina looked down, and Esteban saw her hands trembling slightly. That's a very complicated question, Esteban. Before he could answer, he heard footsteps running from inside the house, and a teenage voice shouted, Mom, water is overflowing from the sink. A young girl came running out, and Esteban felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. The girl was 14 years old with dark brown hair, and when she looked up at him, Esteban saw his own green eyes looking back at him. Oh! The young girl stopped abruptly when she saw him. I didn't know we had a visitor, Emilia Marina said, and Esteban detected a note of concern in her voice. This is Esteban Santamaria, an old friend. Esteban, this is my daughter Emilia. Esteban couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The girl standing in front of him was a perfect blend of him and Marina. She had his bone structure, his hair color, but her eyes were exactly the same as his. Mom, are you okay? Emilia asked, noticing her mother's sudden paleness. Yes, sweetheart. Why don't you go fix the sink? I need to talk to Mr. Santamaria. Emilia nodded, but before leaving, she looked at Esteban curiously. You're the rich man everyone in town talks about, Emilia Marina said quickly. That's right, Esteban managed to say, although his voice sounded strange even to him. Yes, I suppose so. Did you know my mom when you were young? Yes, they were friends. Esteban looked at Marina, who had tears forming in her eyes. Yes, he said softly. We were very good friends. How nice, Amelia smiled. Mom doesn't talk much about when she was young. Go fix that leak now, yes. When Amelia disappeared inside the house, the silence became deafening. Esteban looked at Marina, who couldn't hold his gaze. Marina, his voice was barely a whisper. How old is she? 14. Marina replied, and each word seemed to take enormous effort. When she was born, 8 months after you left, Esteban felt dizzy. He leaned against the door frame, trying to process what he had just heard. She's your daughter, Esteban. Emilia is your daughter. The words hit Esteban like an avalanche. 15 years. He had had a daughter for 15 years and didn't know it. He had been a father since he was 23 and had never known. Why? His voice broke. Why didn't you ever tell me? Tears began to run down Marina's cheeks. How could I tell you? You left, Esteban. You left without a word, without an explanation, without a promise to return. What was I supposed to do? Follow you to the big city with a baby in my arms and ask you to take responsibility? Yes, Esteban exclaimed, then lowered his voice when he realized Amelia could hear him. Yes, Marina, that's exactly what you should have done. Seriously, Marina wiped her eyes furiously. The same man who left without saying goodbye, the same man who promised me he would come back and then disappeared for 15 years. I didn't know you were pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant when you left. I found out a week after you disappeared. Esteban ran his hands through his hair, trying to understand everything. Why now? Why did you contact me now? Because of your grandmother, Marina, she said, wiping away her tears. She's dying, Esteban, and in her lucid moments, she keeps talking about you. She says she needs to see you one more time before she goes, and you've been taking care of her. Someone had to. After you left, I had nowhere to go. My parents kicked me out when they found out I was pregnant and unmarried. Your grandmother took me in. She helped me during my pregnancy. She helped me raise Amelia. She has been more of a mother to me than my own mother. Esteban felt as if he were watching his life from the outside, as if none of this were real. Amelia knows who I am. She thinks her father was a man who died before she was born. I told her you had died in an accident. You told her I was dead. What did you want me to tell her? That her father abandoned us? That making money was more important to him than starting a family? I didn't know, but you didn't come back. The intensity of their voices had increased, and suddenly they heard the faint but clear voice of grandmother Elena from inside. Marina, is that Esteban? My grandson has finally come home. Marina and Esteban looked at each other, and in that moment all the harsh words faded away. There was pain between them. There were years of misunderstandings and broken hearts, but there was also something else. There was a daughter that neither of them knew how to handle, and there was an elderly woman who was dying and who had been waiting for her grandson for 15 years. Come on, Marina, he said softly. She needs you. As they walked into the house, Esteban saw photographs on the walls that weren't there when he left. Photographs of Amelia growing up as a baby, as a little girl, as a preteen, 15 years of lost moments, 15 years of birthdays and first days of school, and little achievements he had never witnessed. And in the center of all those photographs was one of him and Marina when they were 18, embracing under the old oak tree in the town square. They looked so young, so hopeful, so sure that love could conquer anything. Now, 15 years later, Esteban wondered if any of that love remained or if time and hurt had destroyed it forever. But when they arrived at his grandmother's room and he saw the frail woman who had been his rock throughout his childhood, he knew that no matter what happened between him and Marina, he had come home for a reason. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fix some of the things he had broken when he left. Grandmother Elena's room was bathed in a golden twilight that spoke of years of memories and secrets kept. Lace curtains filtered the evening light, creating dancing shadows on the walls where faded photographs of 3 generations of the Santa Maria family hung. Esteban paused in the doorway, his heart beating so hard that he feared Marina might hear it. The woman who had raised him after his parents' death lay in the wrought iron bed he remembered from his childhood. But she looked so fragile that it seemed a sigh could carry her away. Grandma, he whispered, slowly approaching the bed. Elena's eyes opened with difficulty, and when they focused on Esteban's face, they filled with tears that spoke of years of waiting and almost lost hope. My son, her voice was barely a whisper, but it was so full of love that Esteban had to grab the edge of the bed to keep from falling. I knew you would come back. I knew it in my heart. Esteban took his grandmother's wrinkled hand in his. He was surprised by how cold and light it felt. This woman had been his rock, his strength, the person who had fed him when there was no food and comforted him when the world seemed too cruel. Forgive me, Grandma. Forgive me for leaving when you needed me most, for not being here all these years. There is nothing to forgive, my son, Elena murmured, raising a trembling hand to touch Esteban's cheek. You had to go. You had to find your way, but I knew your heart would bring you back home. Marina watched from the corner of the room, and Esteban could feel the weight of her gaze. There was so much to say, so much to explain, but at this moment, all that existed was the woman who had loved him unconditionally when the world had rejected him. How are you feeling? Esteban asked, though he could see the answer in his grandmother's sunken eyes. Tired, my son, very tired, but now that you're here, I can rest. Don't say that. You're going to get better. I'm going to get you the best doctors, the best treatment. Elena smiled with a wisdom that only comes with age and suffering. Esteban, my dear grandson, there are things money can't buy, and my time has come. No, her voice broke. You can't leave now. I just got back. We need to talk. I have to explain why I left. I have to shh. Elena interrupted him gently. I already know why you left, and I know why you came back. Her eyes moved to Marina, who had approached the other side of the bed. Marina, my daughter, come here. Marina approached and Elena took her hand with her other free hand. Look what God gave me before I left. My two most beloved children together again. Grandma Marina, she whispered. I didn't know if I should call you. I didn't know if you did the right thing, my daughter. You always do the right thing, even when it's the hardest thing to do. Esteban looked at Marina over the bed and saw silent tears running down her cheeks. In that moment, all his anger and resentment vanished, replaced by a painful understanding. Marina had carried everything, the responsibility of raising her daughter alone, the care of an elderly sick woman, and the weight of a secret she had protected for 15 years. Where is my great-granddaughter? Elena asked suddenly. Where is Amelia? Esteban's heart stopped. She knows. Elena smiled mischievously despite her weakness. Grandson, I have lived 82 years. Do you think I cannot recognize the eyes of my own family? Grandmother, Marina began, but Elena interrupted her. From the moment she was born, I knew whose child she was. She has the Santa Maria eyes, her grandfather's stubbornness, and her father's noble heart. Esteban felt as if he were drowning. All this time you knew I was Amelia's father. Of course I knew. And I respect Marina's decision not to tell you. She did what she thought was best for her daughter. But it was better, Esteban asked, the frustration and confusion evident in his voice. It was better that I didn't know I had a daughter. Elena looked deeply into her grandson's eyes. You would have come back if you had known. You would have given up your dreams to marry a girl from the village and raise a baby in this poverty. The question hit Esteban like a slap in the face. He wanted to say yes immediately, but honesty stopped him. At 23, wounded by the death of his parents and desperate to escape this place, he would have done the right thing. I don't know, he finally admitted. And those 3 words weighed more than any confession he could have made. That uncertainty is exactly why Marina never told you, Elena said softly. She loved you too much to trap you with a responsibility you might not want. Marina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She didn't want you to feel obligated to be with us. She wanted you to come back because you really wanted to be here. At that moment, the door opened slowly and Amelia poked her head in. Can I come in? I wanted to see how great-grandma Elena is doing. Of course, my love. Elena reached out a hand to the teenager. Come here. Amelia came in and sat on the edge of the bed with the ease of someone who had spent years caring for the elderly woman. How are you feeling today? Better now that my whole family is here, Elena replied, looking meaningfully at Esteban. Amelia followed her gaze and studied Esteban with the direct curiosity of teenagers. Mr. Santa Maria, did you really know my mom when you were young? Yes, Esteban replied in his hoarse voice. We were very close. Were you boyfriend and girlfriend? Amelia asked with the brutal honesty of a 14-year-old. Marina immediately tensed up. Emilia, those are not appropriate questions. It's okay, Esteban said, looking at his daughter. The words still felt strange in his mind, straight to the point. Yes, we were boyfriend and girlfriend. Your mom was the most important person I ever knew in my life. Amelia smiled. And why did you break up? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Esteban looked at Marina, who looked back at him with a mixture of terror and resignation. Because I was young and stupid, Esteban finally said, and I thought I could build a better life somewhere else. I didn't understand that the better life was already here. And now that you've come back, Emilia insisted, now you understand. Elena squeezed both adults' hands. Emilia, my dear great-granddaughter, there are things that adults need time to figure out. But you always say that time is the one thing we can't get back. Amelia replied with relentless logic. And you're right, Elena sighed. That's why it's so important not to waste any more of it. A heavy silence settled over the room. Outside, you could hear the wind rustling the leaves of the old oak tree in the courtyard. The same tree under which Esteban and Marina had carved their initials when they were 18. Amelia Marina said softly, "Could you go make some tea for great-grandmother Elena? Can't you talk to me here?" Emilia asked, but seeing her mother's serious expression, she sighed. "All right, but don't be too long. Important conversations shouldn't be held in secret." When Amelia left, Elena looked at them both with eyes that had seen too much and understood more than they showed. "Listen to me carefully, my children." Her voice was weak but firm. "I don't have much time left, and there are things I need to tell you before I go." Both Esteban and Marina leaned forward, sensing the urgency in the old woman's words. "Esteban, my dear grandson, you have a beautiful and intelligent daughter who has grown up without a father. Marina has done an extraordinary job raising her alone, but that girl needs to know who her father is. She needs to know where she comes from." "But how?" Esteban asked. "How do I tell her that I've been alive all this time? How do I explain that I abandoned her without knowing it?" "With the truth," Elena replied simply. "Children understand more than we think, and Amelia is special. She has her mother's heart and her father's intelligence." She turned to Marina. "And you, my daughter, have carried this secret for too long. It's time to let someone else share that burden." "I'm afraid, Marina," she whispered. "I'm afraid Amelia will hate me for lying to her. I'm afraid Esteban will feel obligated to stay. I'm afraid that when he leaves again, this time he'll take my daughter with him." "What if he doesn't leave?" Elena asked. "What if this time he decides to stay?" Esteban felt something stirring in his chest, something he had kept buried for years. "What if I want to stay?" Marina looked at him in surprise. "What? What if everything I've built in these 15 years means nothing compared to what I lost when I left?" Esteban and Marina murmured, "You can't make decisions like that. You can't change your whole life based on feelings from the past. And if they're not feelings from the past," Esteban got up from his chair and began to pace around the room. "What if they're feelings that never went away? What if all these years, all I've been doing is trying to fill a void I left here?" Elena smiled despite her weakness. "Now you're speaking from the heart, but it's complicated." Marina protested. "It's not just the two of us. There's Amelia. There's your life in the city. There's your company, your money, your world." "Money hasn't made me happy," Esteban admitted. "Success hasn't filled the void. For 15 years, I've been looking for something I thought I'd lost forever. And now it turns out it was here all along." At that moment, Amelia returned with a tray of tea, interrupting the conversation. But as she poured the cups with the care of someone who had done this many times before, Esteban looked at her with new eyes. This was his daughter. This intelligent, loving teenager was part of him, part of Marina, part of a future that had been waiting for him for 15 years. "Emilia, Elena," she said as she took a sip of tea, "what do you know about your father?" Amelia sat down on the floor next to the bed. "Mom told me he was a good man, that he died before I was born, that he would have loved me very much if he had lived." Esteban felt tears burning his eyes. Marina had protected his memory, even when she had every reason to hate him. "And what do you think about that?" Elena continued. "Sometimes I feel sad because I have no memories of him. But Mom says I carry the best of him inside me. And I have Mom and you, great-grandma Elena. I have a family that loves me. Would you like to know more about your father?" Elena asked, ignoring the alarmed looks from Marina and Esteban. Emilia thought for a moment. I guess so, but I'm also afraid that if I learn more about him, I'll be even sadder about losing him. Elena reached out her hand to Esteban. What if I told you that your father didn't die? What if I told you he's here in this room? The silence that followed was so complete that you could hear the heartbeat of every person in the room. The silence in the room was so thick that it seemed to have a life of its own. Emilia blinked slowly, processing her great-grandmother's words, while Marina held her breath and Esteban felt as if the world had stopped spinning. What does that mean? Emilia asked in a small voice that contrasted sharply with the confidence she had shown minutes before. Elena looked at Marina and then at Esteban, searching for some sign that they were ready for this. But the truth had its own timeline, and she had learned in her 82 years that postponing the inevitable only caused more pain. My dear great-granddaughter, Elena said with heartbreaking tenderness, there are things about your father that you don't know, things your mother hid to protect you. Marina put her hand over her mouth, stifling a sob. Her eyes filled with tears of pure terror. For 14 years she had lived in fear of this moment, and now it was here as inevitable as the sunrise. Mom, Emilia turned to Marina, and in her green eyes, those eyes that were exactly like Esteban's, there was confusion that was slowly turning into something more dangerous. Mistrust. What is great-grandmother Elena talking about? Marina opened her mouth, but no words came out. How do you explain to your daughter that her entire world is about to collapse? How do you tell her that everything she believed about her family history was a well-intentioned lie? Esteban rose from his chair, his hands visibly shaking. Emilia's voice was hoarse, charged with an emotion she had been holding back for hours. Your mother told you that your father had died because it was easier than explaining the truth. What truth? Emilia asked. And now there was something fierce in her voice, something that painfully reminded Esteban of himself when he was her age and the world had lied to him about how things worked. The truth is that your father didn't die, Esteban continued, taking a step toward her. The truth is that your father was a coward who left town when your mother needed him most, without knowing that he had gotten her pregnant. Marina moaned softly. Esteban, no. Marina deserves to know the whole truth, not a watered-down version. Esteban knelt in front of Emilia, bringing himself to her level. Your father was young, he was scared, and he thought he could build a better life somewhere else. He left without a word, without a promise, without looking back. Emilia's eyes moved between Esteban and Marina, and something in her expression changed. The innocence evaporated, replaced by an understanding that no 14-year-old should ever have to reach. You, she whispered, you are my father. The words hung in the air like broken glass. Marina covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Elena closed her eyes as if the revelation had cost her every ounce of strength she had left. Yes, Esteban said, and that simple word contained 15 years of regret, pain, and unspoken love. I am your father. For a moment that felt like an eternity, Emilia didn't react. She just sat there staring at him, and Esteban could see her mind working, connecting pieces she never knew existed. The identical green eyes, the similar bone structure, the little ways they looked alike that she might have subconsciously noticed. Then, like a storm finally breaking, the emotion hit her. No, she cried, standing up so abruptly that she knocked over the teacup. You're lying. My father is dead. Mom told me so. Emilia, please. Marina stood up, trying to get closer to her daughter, but Emilia recoiled as if her touch might burn her. You too. You lied to me too. Tears began to run down Emilia's cheeks, but there was anger in them, not sadness. For how long? How long have you been lying? Since you were born, Marina whispered, each word seeming to be torn from the depths of her soul. Emilia, please, let me explain. Explain what? Emilia turned to Esteban, and the intensity of her gaze made him recoil. Explain why my father abandoned me. Explain why I thought he was dead for 14 years when he was actually alive, living richly while we struggled. I didn't know, Esteban said desperately. Emilia, you have to believe me. I didn't know you existed. But he left, Emilia cried out, and in her voice was all the pain of a girl who had grown up wondering why she didn't have a dad like the other kids. He left and left us alone. Yes, Esteban admitted, because the lie had already caused enough damage. Yes, I left. I left because I was young and stupid and thought I had lost everything when my parents died. I left because I didn't know how to stay in a place that reminded me of so much pain. What about our pain? Amelia asked. And the question was like a knife straight to Esteban's heart. What about mom's pain when she had to raise you alone? What about my pain when other children asked why I didn't have a father? Marina slowly approached her daughter. Amelia, sweetheart, please don't touch me. Amelia moved away again. You told me he was dead. You made me cry for him. You made me miss someone who wasn't even dead. I protected you, Marina said, and there was despair in her voice. I protected you from the truth because the truth was too painful for a little girl. You protected me. Amelia laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Protecting me meant lying to me my whole life. Protecting me was letting me fantasize about a father I never knew when in reality he had abandoned me. Elena, who had been watching silently, finally spoke in a voice so weak that everyone had to lean in to hear her. Emilia, my great-granddaughter, come here. No, you knew too. Everyone knew except me. Come here, Elena repeated, and there was something in her tone that cut through Emilia's fury. Please. Emilia slowly approached the bed, but kept her distance from Marina and Esteban. Sit down, Elena asked, patting the bed next to her. I need to tell you something that no one else knows. Emilia sat down, but kept her arms crossed defensively. When your mother found out she was pregnant, Elena began, she came to me crying. She was terrified, alone, and her own parents had kicked her out of the house. Marina sobbed softly as she remembered those terrible days. She begged me to help her find your father, to help her tell him about the baby, but I said no. Both Marina and Esteban turned to Elena in surprise. What? Marina murmured. I told her not to look for him. Elena continued to stare at Amelia. I told her that a man who leaves without saying goodbye isn't ready to be a father. I told her that if your father came back of his own accord, then we would know he was the kind of man who deserved to meet you. Silence fell over the room again, but this time it had a different weight. Then Amelia said slowly, You lied to me too. I didn't lie to you, Elena replied firmly. Your mother lied to you. I simply didn't correct the lie. What's the difference? The difference, my dear great-granddaughter, is that I was waiting for your father to mature enough to come back for the right reasons. Emilia looked at Esteban and came back for the right reasons. I came back because my grandmother is dying, Esteban admitted. But now that I'm here, now that I know about you, I can't imagine leaving again. But will you leave? Emilia asked. And the vulnerability in his voice broke the hearts of everyone in the room. When great-grandmother Elena dies, he will leave again. Esteban looked at Marina, then at Elena, then back at his daughter. I don't know, he said honestly. I don't know what will happen, but I know I want to get to know you. I know I want to be part of your life if you let me. What about Mom? Amelia asked. What about what you did to Mom? What I did to your mom is unforgivable. Esteban replied, but that's between your mom and me, between you. What I want to ask you is if you would give me a chance to get to know you, to be the father I should have been from the beginning. Amelia was silent for a long moment, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I need time, she finally said. I need time to think about all this. Of course, Esteban replied, as much time as you need. And in the meantime, Amelia asked, are you going to stay in town? Yes, Esteban said without hesitation. I'll stay as long as necessary. Emilia nodded, then got up from the bed. I'm going for a walk. I need to process this. Do you want me to go with you? Marina asked. No, Amelia replied, and although her voice was gentle, there was firmness in it. I need to be alone. When Amelia left the room, the silence she left behind was different from before. It was a silence filled with terrible and beautiful possibilities. A silence that contained the weight of a family that had been broken and that perhaps, just perhaps, could be repaired. Elena closed her eyes, exhausted by the emotional effort. It's done, she murmured. Now it's up to the two of you to decide what to do with the truth. Marina and Esteban looked at each other over the bed, and they both knew that their story was just beginning to be written. The first 2 hours after Amelia left the house passed in tense, heavy silence. Marina had stayed by Elena's bed, obsessively cleaning the same surfaces over and over again, her hands trembling every time the wind moved the curtains. Esteban paced back and forth across the living room, looking out the window every few minutes, his cell phone in his hand, even though there was no reliable signal in the village. "It's almost 7, Marina muttered, more to herself than to him. She usually comes back before dark. Elena had tried to reassure them from her bed, insisting that Amelia just needed time to process, but even her voice sounded less convincing with each passing hour. "She knows every stone in this town." Marina continued to roll and unroll the corner of the blanket, but when she's upset, she sometimes walks farther than she should. Esteban stopped short. "How far?" "There's a place." Marina sighed, finally stopping her nervous cleaning. "An old bridge over the river, about 2 kilometers from the village, is where she goes when she needs to think. But with last week's rains, the river is higher than normal." Something cold ran down Esteban's spine. "It's dangerous. The bridge is old but sturdy. It's just that," Marina paused, biting her lower lip. "It's just that when Amelia is very upset, she sometimes doesn't pay attention to things she should," as if her words had invoked a premonition. They heard screams from the street, agitated voices, people running. Marina and Esteban looked at each other for a second of pure horror before rushing to the door. In the street, they found Don Pedro, the shopkeeper, talking excitedly with a group of neighbors. When he saw Marina, his expression turned somber. "Marina, my dear." Don Pedro approached, nervously removing his hat. "Emilia, the young Carlos, saw her near the old bridge an hour ago. He says she looked very upset." Marina's heart stopped. In the Marina bridge, one of the supports came loose in the current. "Carlos says that when he returned along the same path, he saw that part of it had collapsed." Esteban felt as if someone had poured ice into his veins. "Where is she? Where is my daughter?" The words came out of his mouth before he could stop them, and the group of neighbors looked at him curiously. But at that moment, he didn't care who knew the truth. "We don't know," Don Pedro replied. "Carlos went to look for her, but came back saying he couldn't find her anywhere near the river." Marina let out a sound that was half a sob, half a moan. "We have to go. We have to look for her." "I'm coming with you," Esteban said immediately. "So do we," Don Pedro added, and several other neighbors nodded. "Let's form search parties." As they organized the search, Esteban felt something he had never experienced before in his life: pure parental terror. It wasn't fear of a business that might fail or concern about lost money. It was something primal, visceral, that gripped him from within and threatened to tear him apart. "Marina," he said as they headed toward the river. What if Marina interrupted him abruptly? "Don't say that. She's fine. She has to be fine." But Esteban could see in her eyes the same terror he felt. The sun was beginning to set when they reached the bridge, and the sight that met them made their blood run cold. Indeed, an entire section of the left side had collapsed into the swollen river. Wooden planks floated downstream, and the rushing water roared with a force it hadn't shown in years. "Emilia!" Marina shouted, her voice breaking. "Emilia, my love, if you're there, answer me." Only the roar of the water answered her. Carlos, the young man who had seen Emilia, came running up. "Mrs. Marina, I found something." He led them to a tree near the bridge where a piece of blue fabric hung. "It's from her dress." Marina whispered, touching the fabric as if it were something sacred. "It's from the dress she was wearing." Esteban felt the world sway beneath his feet. For 15 years he had lived without knowing he had a daughter, and now that he knew her, he was going to lose her. He was going to lose the chance to get to know her, to love her, to be the father he should have been. He didn't murmur, and then louder. No, without thinking he threw himself into the river. Esteban Marina screamed, but he was already in the water. The current was stronger than he had anticipated, and the water was freezing. But he didn't care. His daughter was out there somewhere, and he was going to find her. "Amelia!" he shouted against the roar of the water. "Amelia, it's Dad! If you can hear me, shout!" The word Dad came out of his mouth with a naturalness that surprised him. He hadn't planned to say it, but it felt right. It felt as if he had been waiting 15 years to say it. For 20 minutes, Esteban fought against the current, shouting his daughter's name until his voice became hoarse. Marina ran along the shore, calling her name too, tears streaming down her face. It was Don Pedro who finally saw them. "There," he shouted, pointing to a small, rocky island downstream. There's someone there. And there was Amelia sitting on the rocks, soaked and shivering, but alive. Mama. Her voice came faintly over the sound of the water. Esteban had never swum so fast in his life. When he finally reached the island and took Amelia in his arms, he felt as if he had been holding his breath for hours and could finally exhale. "Are you okay?" He whispered over and over, holding her close to his chest. "Are you okay, my girl? Are you okay?" "I couldn't go back." Amelia sobbed against his shoulder. The bridge collapsed, and she couldn't go back. "It doesn't matter. Are you okay now? Daddy's here. I know that word again." And this time Amelia didn't reject it. The trip back to shore was easier with Don Pedro and other men helping from a makeshift boat. When they finally reached dry land, Marina wrapped Amelia in a blanket and hugged her as if she would never let go. She was so scared. Marina was crying. "I thought I'd lost you. You won't lose me," Amelia whispered. "But Mom, I need you to know something." Marina pulled away to look at her. "What, my love?" "I understand why you didn't tell me about Dad, and I understand why he left." Amelia looked at Esteban, who was standing a few feet away, still dripping water from the river. "But when I was sitting on those rocks, thinking that maybe I wouldn't come home, all I wanted was to have a complete family." Esteban approached slowly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't want to waste any more time being angry. I want to get to know you. I want you to be my real dad." Esteban knelt in front of her, taking her small hands in his. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure, but I have conditions." "Tell me." "First condition, no more lies. If you ask me something, you answer me with the truth, no matter how difficult it is. I promise." "Second condition, you're not going to leave again without saying goodbye. If you decide you can't stay, you tell me to my face." Emilia Esteban said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm not going to leave again. Period. How can you be sure?" Esteban looked at Marina, who was watching them with an expression he couldn't decipher. "Because when I thought I had lost you, I realized that nothing I've built in these 15 years matters compared to you, compared to this family." He turned to Marina. "And because I realized that I never stopped loving your mother, that for 15 years I've been trying to fill a void that only she can fill." Marina put her hand to her mouth, her eyes filling with fresh tears. "Marina." Esteban continued to stand up slowly. "I know I have no right to ask this of you. I know I don't deserve a second chance after what I did. But if you let me, if you let us, I want to spend the rest of my life making up for these 15 lost years." Esteban, Marina whispered. "I love you." He simply said, "I never stopped loving you. And if you give me the chance, I will love you for the rest of my life." Marina looked at Emilia, who nodded with a small but genuine smile. "What do you say, Mom?" Emilia asked. "Should we give him a chance?" Marina looked at Esteban for a long moment, and he could see the battle raging in her eyes. Fear versus hope, past pain versus future possibility. A chance. Finally, she said, "But Esteban, if you hurt me again, if you hurt Emilia again, there won't be a third chance." "You won't see it," Esteban promised, "because I won't hurt you again." As they walked back to town with Emilia between them, Esteban realized that it had taken him 15 years and almost losing his daughter to understand what really mattered in life. But now he knew, and he wasn't going to waste this second chance. The following days passed as if time had taken on a different quality, denser, more precious. Esteban had canceled all his business meetings, ignored urgent calls from his office, and politely but firmly rejected his chief assistant's pleas for him to return to the city, even if only for a few hours. "Mr. Santa Maria, boy," Carmen had insisted on the phone, "the board of directors is asking when you're coming back. The contract with the Japanese needs your personal signature." "Tell them I'm dealing with something more important," Esteban had replied, watching through the window as Emilia helped Marina hang clothes in the backyard. "Something that can't wait." Elena had had good days and bad days. On good days, she would sit in her favorite chair on the patio, wrapped in blankets, smiling as she watched her family rebuild itself before her eyes. On bad days, she could barely keep her eyes open, and her breathing became laborious. It was a Friday morning when Elena asked to speak to Esteban alone. "Come closer, my son," she said in a voice that sounded like dry leaves rustling on the ground. "I need to tell you something important." Esteban sat down next to her bed, taking his grandmother's frail hand in his. "What's wrong, Grandma? My time is running out," Elena said without preamble, with the direct honesty that had characterized her entire life. "I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my heart." "Don't say that," Esteban protested automatically. "You're going to get better. I can get doctors from the city, the best specialists." Elena smiled with infinite patience. "Esteban, my dear grandson, there are things that money can't buy, and time is one of them. My body is tired. My soul is ready." Esteban felt tears burning his eyes. "But you can't leave now. We've just been reunited as a family. Emilia is just getting to know me, and that's exactly why I can leave in peace." Elena replied, "I've seen what I needed to see. I've seen my grandson become the man I always knew he could be." Elena paused, studying Esteban's face with eyes that had seen too much and understood more than they showed. "But there's something I need you to do for me." "Anything, Grandma, anything. I need you to promise me you won't make the same mistake twice." "What do you mean?" Elena squeezed his hand with surprising strength for someone so frail. "When I'm gone, it will be easy to use my death as an excuse to run away again. It will be easy to tell yourself that there is too much pain here, too many memories." Esteban frowned. "Grandma, I already told you I'm not leaving. Saying and doing are two different things, son. Pain makes people make stupid decisions, and you've proven that you can be very stupid when you're in pain." Despite the gravity of the moment, Esteban found himself smiling slightly, even as she lay dying. His grandmother hadn't lost her ability to speak uncomfortable truths. "What exactly do you need me to promise you?" "Promise me that when I'm gone, you'll stay here with Marina and Amelia. Promise me you're going to build the life you should have built 15 years ago." "I promise, Grandma, and promise me something else." "What?" Elena glanced toward the door, making sure Marina and Amelia couldn't hear. "Promise me you're going to ask Marina to marry you. That woman has loved you for 15 years. She's waited for you without knowing it for 15 years. She deserves to be your wife, not just your girlfriend." Esteban's heart raced. Marriage was something he had been thinking about, but it seemed too soon, too presumptuous after all the damage he had caused. "Don't you think it's too soon? We've only just gotten back together." Esteban Elena sighed. "You've been together for 15 years. Only one of you wasn't present, but your hearts never really separated." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, as if speaking took all her energy. "Marina deserves security. She deserves to know that this time it's forever. And Amelia deserves to have married parents, an official family. And if Marina says no, he's not going to say no. But even if she does, at least he will have been man enough to ask her." That afternoon, while Amelia was at school and Marina was preparing dinner, Esteban found himself pacing nervously around the house, mentally rehearsing words that seemed inadequate for what he wanted to express. Elena had been right, as always. Marina deserved more than vague promises and good intentions. She deserved a real, official, permanent commitment. But when he began to plan how to propose, he realized something that made his blood run cold. He didn't have a ring. More importantly, he didn't have the kind of ring Marina deserved. "Marina," he said, approaching her in the kitchen, "I need to go into town for a few hours." Marina turned away from the stove, an expression of instant panic crossing her face. "You're leaving?" The immediate reaction of fear in her eyes broke Esteban's heart. It reminded him that no matter how many promises he had made, Marina was still afraid he would disappear again. Just for a few hours. Esteban approached her and took her hands. "There's something I need to buy, something important. And what could be so important that it can't wait?" Esteban hesitated. He wanted the marriage to be a surprise, but he also understood that after 15 years of abandonment, Marina needed complete transparency. "A ring," Marina finally admitted. She blinked. "A ring. An engagement ring for you." The color drained from Marina's face, and for a moment Esteban feared she was going to faint. "Are you asking me to marry you? I'm telling you that I want to ask you to marry me, but I want to do it right with the right ring at the right time." Marina sat heavily in a kitchen chair. "Esteban, is this too soon?" he asked, kneeling in front of her. "Too soon after 15 years, isn't that right, Marina?" he murmured, wiping his eyes, which had filled with tears. "I just never thought this day would actually come." "What do you mean?" "All these years, even after I convinced myself you were dead to me, There was a small part of my heart that fantasized about this moment, a part that dreamed you would come back and ask me to be your wife. Esteban took her hands. And what does that part of your heart think now? Marina looked him in the eyes, and Esteban could see years of pain, hope, love, and fear battling in her expression. That part of my heart says yes before you even officially ask. Seriously, seriously. But Esteban, I need you to understand something. What? If I do this, if I agree to marry you, it's forever. No divorces, no separations, no running away when things get tough. I understand. Do you really understand? Marina asked. And there was an intensity in her voice that made him pay full attention. Because marrying me also means marrying this town, this life. It means your priorities are going to have to change forever. My priorities have already changed, Esteban replied. The day I met Amelia, the day I almost lost her in the river, the day I realized that no amount of money in the world is worth more than this family. Marina studied his face for a long moment. Will you really be able to be happy here? Without the big deals, without the important meetings, without the adrenaline rush of closing million-dollar contracts? Esteban thought about the question. It was a good question, an important question. For 15 years, he had defined his self-worth by his financial success, by his ability to control and conquer. You know what? He finally said, I was never really happy with those things. Successful, yes. Respected, yes. But happy? The only moments of true happiness I've had in 15 years have been here with you and Amelia. But what are you going to do here? You can't just sit around. I can run my company from here. I can travel when absolutely necessary, but always come home. I can invest in this town, create jobs here, make San Rafael del Valle a prosperous place. Marina's eyes lit up. Would you do that? I would do that and more, Marina. I want to turn this place into the town of our dreams. I want Amelia to grow up here, but in a place that has a future, that has opportunities. Marina was silent for a moment, processing everything he had said. All right, she finally whispered. It's okay for you to go buy the ring. But Esteban, yes, don't be too long. Elena is getting worse, and I don't know how much time she has left. As if summoned by her words, they heard Elena's weak voice from her room. Marina, Esteban, come here, please. When they entered the room, they found Elena paler than she had been in days. Her breathing was labored, and there was something in her eyes that told them this could be one of her last moments of lucidity. Come closer, Elena murmured. Both of you. They approached the bed, and Elena took one hand from each of them. I don't have much time left, she said in a voice that was barely a whisper. But I need to tell you something before I go. Both Marina and Esteban leaned forward. 15 years have been lost, Elena continued. 15 years of pain, of separation, of missed opportunities. But look at what God has given you in return. A beautiful daughter, a love that survived time and distance, and a second chance that many people never get. Elena paused, gasping slightly. Don't waste this second chance. Don't waste it worrying about the past or fearing the future. Live in the present, Emanuela, Esteban murmured, tears running down his cheeks. And remember, Elena added with a weak but genuine smile, true love is not the kind that never faces difficulties. True love is the kind that survives difficulties and grows stronger. At that moment, they heard the front door open and Amelia's footsteps running through the house. I'm home. Where is everyone? Here, my love, Marina called back. Amelia appeared in the doorway, her school uniform slightly wrinkled after a day of activities. How is great-grandma Elena? She asked, approaching the bed. I'm waiting, Elena replied, reaching out a hand to her great-granddaughter. Waiting for what? Waiting to see your dad ask your mom to marry him. Amelia turned to her parents with wide eyes. Dad is going to ask Mom to marry him. That's the idea, Esteban replied, blushing slightly. But that's wonderful, Amelia shouted, jumping up and down with excitement. When? How can I help? Elena laughed softly, a sound that was beautiful despite her weakness. That, my dear great-granddaughter, depends on your dad. And as the family gathered around Elena's bed, Esteban knew that the time had come to make the most important decision of his life. The following dawn arrived with a stillness that seemed to hold the breath of the entire world. Esteban woke up on the living room sofa, where he had spent the night keeping watch, and he knew immediately that something had changed. The silence was different, deeper, more definitive. He approached Elena's room quietly and found Marina already awake, sitting by the bed, holding the old woman's hand. Tears ran silently down her cheeks, but there was a peace in her expression that told him everything he needed to know. When he whispered, Esteban approached slowly. "An hour ago," Marina murmured without taking her eyes off Elena's serene face. "It was very peaceful." She left smiling. Esteban sat down on the other side of the bed, taking his grandmother's other hand, which still retained some warmth. He said something. He said it was time to go, that you no longer needed her because now you had each other. Marina wiped her eyes with the back of her free hand and said she was ready to see her parents again. For a moment, the two of them were silent, processing the loss. Elena had been the silent matriarch of this reconstructed family, the force that had kept them together even when they were apart. "Where's Amelia?" Esteban finally asked. "She's still asleep." I wanted her to wake up naturally, not with sad news, as if she had heard her name. Emilia appeared at the door, rubbing her sleepy eyes, but when she saw her parents' expressions, she woke up completely. Great-grandmother Elena murmured, slowly approaching the bed. "She passed away peacefully, my love," Marina said softly, opening her arms to draw Emilia toward her. During the night, while she slept, Emilia stared at Elena's peaceful face for a long moment. "She looks happy," she finally said, "as if she's dreaming something beautiful. She's probably dreaming that she's dancing with your great-grandfather again." Esteban murmured, remembering the stories Elena used to tell him about her late husband. The next few hours passed in a haze of necessary phone calls, arrangements to be made, people arriving to pay their respects. The whole town seemed to have lost a mother, and the house was filled with neighbors bringing food, flowers, and memories of Elena. She was a saint. Doña Carmen, the next-door neighbor, said to Marina as she placed a casserole on the kitchen table. "She took care of you and the girl all these years and never complained. She saved us." Marina replied simply, "When I had nowhere to go, she opened her home and her heart to us." But it was Don Pedro who said something that stayed with Esteban for the rest of the day. His grandmother told me last week that she could now leave in peace. She said she had seen the miracle she had been waiting for, to see her family reunited again. As evening fell, when the last visitors had left and Emilia was helping Marina organize the flowers that had arrived, Esteban found himself standing in the backyard, looking toward the mountains where he had grown up. "Dad?" Emilia's voice pulled him out of his thoughts. "Are you okay?" He turned to find her standing in the doorway with a mature look of concern that reminded him painfully of Marina. "I'm sad," Esteban admitted, "but I'm also grateful. Grateful. Why? Because your great-grandmother Elena lived long enough to really know you, to see us together as a family." Emilia approached and stood beside him. "Do you think she's watching from heaven?" "I'm sure she is. Then maybe there should be something nice," Emilia said with the simple wisdom of youth. "Something that makes her happy." Esteban looked at his daughter, processing her words. "What do you have in mind? Weren't you going to ask Mom to marry you?" Esteban's heart raced. "Emilia, this isn't the right time. We just lost your great-grandmother." "Dad!" Emilia looked at him with those serious green eyes. "Great-grandmother Elena waited her whole life to see us together as a family. Don't you think she would want to know that we're going to stay together forever?" Before Esteban could respond, Marina appeared in the doorway. "What are you two talking about?" Esteban and Emilia looked at each other, and there was a moment of silent understanding between father and daughter. "Mom," Emilia said, taking Marina's hand and leading her over to where Esteban was standing, "Dad has something to ask you now." Marina asked, confused. "Emilia, today is not the day for it. It's exactly the right day." Esteban interrupted, and suddenly he knew Emilia was right. "Marina, Elena made me promise something before she left. What was that?" Esteban slowly knelt down in the same courtyard where he had played as a child, where he had dreamed of a better future, where he had now found everything that really mattered. "She made me promise that I would ask you to marry me." Marina put her hand to her mouth, stifling a gasp. "Esteban, Marina Bolivar." Esteban continued, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "15 years ago, I was stupid enough to let you go, but fate, Elena, and our daughter gave me a second chance that I don't deserve, but that I will honor for the rest of my life." He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring with a diamond that captured the last rays of the setting sun. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for the years we lost? Will you let me be the husband I should always have been and the father Emilia deserves? Marina looked at the ring, then at Esteban, then at Emilia, who had tears of joy running down her cheeks. Elena said that true love is the kind that survives hardship. Marina, she murmured, and ours survived 15 years of separation, painful secrets, and almost losing our daughter. That's a yes, Esteban asked, his voice trembling slightly. That's a yes forever, Marina replied, extending her hand. When Esteban slipped the ring onto her finger, Amelia clapped her hands and shouted, "We're going to be a real family. We already were a real family." Esteban stood up and wrapped both women in his arms. Only now it's official. A year and a half later, the Church of San Rafael del Valle had not seen such a big celebration in decades. Esteban had insisted that the wedding be in the village, surrounded by the people who had witnessed their love story from the beginning. Marina walked down the aisle in a simple, elegant white dress, accompanied by Don Pedro, who had offered to give her his arm when he learned that she had no father to walk with her. Amelia, now 16 and a beautiful young woman, was her maid of honor. But what was most exciting for the townspeople was to see how their community had flourished since Esteban's return. He had financed the renovation of the school, brought jobs to the village, and built a modern medical clinic. San Rafael del Valle had gone from being a village that was slowly dying to a place full of hope and future. Do you promise to love Marina in sickness and in health, in wealth and in poverty, in good times and in bad, for the rest of your life? Father Martin asked. I promise much more than that, Esteban replied, looking directly into Marina's eyes. I promise never to forget what really matters again. I promise that our family will be my priority every day of my life. And I promise that I will never again be stupid enough to walk away from love. When they kissed after being declared husband and wife, Esteban could have sworn he felt Elena's presence smiling from somewhere beyond the clouds. At the reception, as he danced with Marina under the stars of the same sky he had gazed at as a child, Esteban reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. What are you thinking about? Marina asked, resting her head on his shoulder. I'm thinking that Elena was right, especially that I had to waste 15 years to understand what it really means to be rich. And what does it mean? It means having someone who loves you unconditionally. It means having a family who would choose to be with you even if you had nothing. It means knowing that when you come home, you will always be welcome. Marina lifted her head to look at him. And now you feel rich? Now I feel like the richest man in the world. At the main table, Amelia watched them dance with a smile that radiated pure happiness. At 16, she had seen her family destroyed and rebuilt. She had learned that a true love can survive anything, and she had gained not only a father, but an example of what it means to fight for the people you love. You know what, Great-Grandma Elena, she murmured to the starry sky. In the end, you were right. True love always finds its way home. And as the music continued and the town celebrated, 3 generations of love were united in a promise that would last forever, that they would never be separated again, that they would never again allow pride or fear to destroy what they had built together, because they had learned that true wealth is not measured in money, but in the moments you share with the people you love. And in San Rafael del Valle, under the stars that had witnessed the birth of their love story, the Santa Maria Bolivar family was finally complete. Ta.